Alright guys, Jason here, working on an 87 Jeep Wrangler. Lost keys for the ignition. I have already popped the horn blowy thingy here, cover off. You just pull it straight off. It snap rings on, so it's just pressure put on. And I've started loosening the nut already with a 7/8 inch wrench, and they're pretty tight. So the nut comes off, and I usually line the pieces up here. So we need a I don't probably have anywhere to put the camera, so I'm going to do this one hand. Alright, so we'll go ahead and take the buzzer ring off. Now these you have to be very gentle with, because basically it's 20-year-old plastic and can be real brittle. So you always got to be kind of careful with this part. And basically the whole horn assembly will be coming off here. Okay, I'm going to have to go in close to hold it with my hand. Alright, so what comes off there is 2 or 3 pieces. I don't even know if his horn works. On these, you do have to notate this pin is spring loaded, and it has to contact the back of this. This has to go on just like it was. So that comes off with the 3 screws. And grab this other screw and put it through the hole. Take this, I'm going to set it down back here very carefully. Okay, now this brings us to actually pulling the wheel. We need 2 screws in the puller, so I have to go through my screws here to see which one it is, and then hopefully find the set of it. I'm going to pick out which puller I'm going to use. I'm going to just use this plain old puller right here. Actually I'm not, this one's got the divot in it, so I'm going to use my I'm going to use this one. It has the divot. Oh, sorry about the camera, guys. Anyway, I'm just screwing this into this, the puller. And sometimes you have to go really far out because of it's recessed, but on this one we don't, so we don't have to screw this in very far. It depends on the length of the bolts. So we're going to pick out which bolt holes. It's going to be these 2 up and down, and we're going to test the bolt. That's one of them. So then we're going to put it in like this. Really got to get a GoPro. It's my Christmas wish list. GoPro. So on these, you want to tighten these down. Basically, the two support bolts, or the puller bolts, you want to get it down about at least ½ an inch, so that when you're pulling it, it doesn't press. So what I basically do is I go hand tight, and then I'll back it off like ½ a turn. So hand tight, back it off ½ a turn, or maybe a full turn. So you want enough thread to bite into this metal so that when you're pulling it, it doesn't strip. So then we're going to put pressure on the center. And see, we have two unequal bolts here, so that's not good. We gotta get equal sized bolts. I don't know how that one slipped by me. So basically what we're doing here now is making sure that when I start twisting on this, it's going to push it forward, and then this will pull, which pulls the wheel off of the splines that I'll show you. So you have to have 2 or 3 things just right for this to work. These bolts have to be equally as long. They both have to sit flush. This has to be pretty much parallel, so that when you start doing this, you start unscrewing it, the wheel, let's go over here. Okay. Again, sorry about this, but I'm bracing the back of this while I'm turning it. So it looks like the wheel's about to come off here. All right, it just gave up pressure there. So right now I should just be able to yank on the wheel and it'll come off. So before I do that, see how the wheel's raising? All right. So basically I'm done with my puller for the duration. Don't need my puller anymore. So we're going to take it off. Take the bolts out. I have to loosen it there. Alright. So I'm going to take them off. Put it in the toolbox. Put all the bolts that we went through to find the right one back in the toolbox. Alright, so now we can see the wheel will just come straight off. You gotta be careful because of that spring-loaded doodad. Alright, wheel off. Now, there is, on some of these little splines, when you're putting the wheel back on, you see the splines right there? They have to go back in just right. If you look at the splines, now this one, of course, doesn't have it now. See, there's a hole that's spring-loaded, which is, I believe, it's your horn tab or something like that. That goes back in that hole. Okay, so now we're coming to the part where we are hitting another delicate area. Let's see if I can find a little screwdriver here. These plastic things have 3 notches, and they go, see how it's cracked right there? So you may be able to pop it off with your hand, like so. You may have to pry it a little bit, which if you can't do it here because it's dry rotted like that, okay, so I just got it out. So you gotta be careful with that. I'm gonna set that one up there. All right, so now we have to go to taking the turn hazard out. Now this one's nice and rusted in. It actually uses a flathead screw. Crazy crazy. Put that back here with our important stuff. Alright, so now to get to the ignition and to get this, we have to depress this. Basically, there is a little spring right there. Just a spring piece of steel that's in a notch. That has to come out, but to do that, you have to push this down. And pushing it down requires a pushy downy thing, which is not that. Pushy downy thing. Where'd my pushy downy thing go? Oh, here it is. Alright. Pushy downy thing. So on this, you screw it down. About to there. You position these legs away from this. Usually I put it here and I put it there, or you could do it here and here, but see, that blocks my view, so I always do it here and here. Alright, and then you're going to tighten this nut down. Okay, now as you tighten that nut, it will push the legs down. I'm going to pause this. I'll be right back. I got to grab a couple of little screwdrivers. Alright, so back. I have the legs pressing in. I'm going to try to do this. Yeah, you can barely see it. Alright, so tighten this nut down. I look really awkward sitting here. Alright, so you're tightening this down, and it's pushing this metal plate down that's spring loaded. And you have to tighten it down about 1/2 inch. Alright, now be very careful with this. This, if it slips, if it's not all the way threaded here, it can slip off, and that's a very violent spring. So never be in the way of this. Now, there's about 8,596 tools on the market to take this spring out. I'll go ahead and move you up and let you look at it. This one's been off. Ooh, whoa. This one's been off before. See how it's loose now that that's not pressing on it? Alright, that screwdriver is all you need. You don't need a gazillion different made tools to do this, circ clip removers and all that other stuff. You basically just need a small flathead screwdriver, or two, usually two. So I'm doing this one-handed now. One-handed again. Alright, so I got it out of the groove there. And then I'm just going to walk my screwdriver around. I'm going to put this here so that I can use both screwdrivers. So I'm holding it. And I'm coming around here. Actually, I'm going to switch. I'm going to hold it with this one. And I'm going to walk it with this one because it's bigger, a little bit bigger. So, walk it out. Walk it out. Okay. Come around the corner. Oop, almost got it. It's just as hard to do this with a fancy tool as it is two flathead screwdrivers. And if you don't have flathead screwdrivers that are this small, you really need to. You should already. Okay, so there we're off. Now, sometimes there's another double ring here and you have to do that again. It's not quite as hard. All right, but we don't have to there. So now we're off. Now we need to unscrew this, and this is where it gets dicey. And I said earlier you have to be careful because there's a really strong spring. So always keep your face away. Hold it here, because if the center post unscrews and releases, it'll basically shoot this into your face. It's not bad spring, but it is heavy spring. All right, till we get it so that we can tell it's loose. Okay, now spring pressure's off. We're going to set this here because we got to put it back on with it. We're going to take the ring off. We're going to put that ring with the don't lose stuff in the back. All right, now we're going to take this front ring off, remembering how it went in there. Now that does have the gap, the bigger gap where the bigger spline is. So, but what I usually do, I'm taking it off so I can show you, but what I usually do is take this off at the same time. This one hadn't been off in a while. It's pretty gooey. So I'm going to kind of give it a little tug there, and then put it back together and set it down with our important stuff. Almost there, guys. So now we have 3 screws. 1, 2, 3. So we're going to unscrew that screw down here. Okay, really helps to have a magnetic driver at this point. You do not want this black screw to go anywhere, especially down the ignition here. So if you have a magnet, now would be a great time to grab it. I am wholly unprepared for that, so I'm going to be brave and pull it out. I'm going to unscrew the turn signal arm and pull it out. Okay, there's a little shaft, a little post that goes into a notch for the turn signal. That has to be put back on just right. There's one other thing that I have not pulled off yet. Also, it's a different kind of screw, so be aware that this screw and the other screw that went down into that are different. So keep those together when you set them down here. But one other thing you should have done before getting those screws was pull the spring out. Set it down just like it is, because it's different on each side. Alright, so we got that screw, we got that screw. That was 3, I meant there were 4. There's one more screw right here. You expose it when you pull that rod off. So there's 3 actual screws in addition to the one that holds the turn signal arm on. And again, you would normally just grab a little magnet and pull this out. So there's your second screw. Now to see your third, you're going to turn your signal, which this will normally make it start blinking. And that exposes your screw right here, which we're going to unscrew. Alright, so that's the 3 screws that hold the white wiring assembly harness doodad thingy on. And we're going to put this down here. So now we're going to pull our harness out. Now there's always a little bit of slack, just enough usually. You have to be, again, extremely careful with this whole assembly, because it's kind of tucked down in there just right. And again, this is really old plastic, and there's no real easy way to grab it. Alright, so basically what we're doing now is we're pulling it out far enough. Ooh, that's got a short wiring harness on it. Okay, we're kind of tugging it gently. Seeing if we can't get to the wires, because we've got some really tight wires here. Alright, so that's, since we do have tight wires, I'm going to try to, usually you can pull it out. Okay. Alright, that'll get us over it. Yes. Alright, that's really all we need, is just to get over the post. I'm going to make sure it's not pressing on anything. And we're going to look in there, and this is our buzzer switch. Oh, again, be very careful with that because the little pieces can break. It's okay though, this has been out before. Normally it has a wing here. Whenever you pull it out for the first time, you break the wing to put it back in. Now this buzzer switch has another piece of steel right there that it presses into. So again, that normally comes out with it. So at this point, we're going to be very careful putting it back together. All right, and last thing, looks like normally this is a star driver. Today it of course is not, so we're going to get a, hopefully this 5/16 nut driver will work, out of a 5-in-1, 3-in-1, 8-in-1, whatever it is. Alright, this is the bolt that holds our ignition in, and we're gonna carefully unscrew it like so. Okay, I'm going to put the camera into a stable position so that I can reach in here and grab this screw, because again, we don't want that screw to even entertain the idea of falling down. So be prepared for that. Again, with a magnet. So basically it's a shaft screw. And once we get that out, we simply pull the ignition out. Alright guys, I'm done. Had to make keys for this sucker. Taking it apart, actually. It's been so long since I've done one, I couldn't find my GM stash, so I just took this Mexican ignition apart and made a key for it. So going back to the reinstallation, let's make sure the camera's as good as we can do it. Alright, so to start off with, we're going to, with the key not turned, going to put it back in. Alright, then we're going to put our bolt in. Our screw bolt. We're going to tighten it down. First we need to move this back off over the way. Okay, push it and then screw it in. Okay. To get our buzzer switch and orienting it the right way. Just slip it in right there. Okay, I'm going to put this back and we're going to push it down just like it was. Make sure it's firmly seated in there. We're going to get our 3 screws from down here. I'm going to screw it back in. Like so. Okay, so there's how you lose a screw. not to cross thread it. Screw that one down. Screw this one down. Hand tight, doesn't have to be tight. Screw this one down. Make sure it's seated. Snug up each screw. Okay. Put our spring back on, just the way it came off. If you look down there, see the toggle? You can see that notch in it? That's what this goes in. So, put it on like so. I think we have an unexpected visitor. Let's check this out. This is her car. Pull up maybe next door. Right. So now we got all that, we can put our little, let's see, we can put the turn signal back on, right here. It's so rusted, so I don't need a screwdriver, or hazard. Hazard button is right there. Now we have to get our plate. Which would be this one. Okay, and then remembering that that was like so, and that that wide notch lines up with that wide notch. Take that plate off, push that down. Remember, it was real sticky. Use the plate again. Make sure your notches are lined up, which they don't seem to be. Need to go. Definitely easier to do this. There we go. So make sure your pin is coming up through here. Okay, looking good. Need to get our spring. Go ahead and slip it over. Like so. So that it's started. Okay. Screw down our, need to reset this. Okay. Tighten that down. Center it on your two legs. Alright. And then start tightening it. Listening for any unusual noise. Alright, I'm going to tighten it down until we expose the notch. Plus just a bit. And go ahead and finish pushing the spring down. Till it snaps in like that and it's loose, freely spinning. Alright, now again, being very careful here, keep your face out of the way. Start backing this off until it engages, and at that point that wire will be holding it in. See, we got it loose. So we can go ahead and unscrew this, and we are done with that part. We get our cap, put it on like it was before. It was about right there. It really will only go on, weirdly enough, one way. About right there. Snap, crackle, pop. Okay. Here, before I get too carried away, I like to make sure that the blinker is up or left, right. I don't know how it worked before. Probably not good. At this point, we can go ahead and put our wheel back on. Remember that the post has to go through that hole. Alright, just like so. Make sure it's good on the spline. And get our nut. I'm going to tighten it down. Would have. All I can think of is this plastic separated. Yeah, that's all it is. The plastic just gave up. So we're going to kind of poke that back down in there like so. Alright. Now at this point we can go ahead and tighten the nut that holds the wheel back on. Again, try to do this one-handed is not fun. Now this, you gotta kind of torque it down there. Make sure it's good and tight. Okay. Let's put our horn assembly ring back in. Which, remember, goes a very specific way. And you have to be careful with it. I know the camera fell. I'm sorry, guys. Can't really see anything anyway. It's so dark. One of the lovely things about doing this in a garage. Oh, it's in a garage. Yeah, that makes it harder to see. Thanks. It'd be great if it's raining, but it's not. So tighten down, tighten down, tighten down, snug, snug, snug. And last but not least, which is the part that we never showed you on the camera, let's just whack that back on. So we should be good. It's not going to crank, but what they needed it for was to put it in neutral. Which is what they can do.